I'm a 16-year-old girl. Before I start my story, I want to share some important information about my family. My dad has been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. This is important to know because it has affected our family dynamics and will be relevant to the story I'm about to share. Okay, so let's call my dad Gary. Gary is a very controlling person. He likes to be in charge of many things, and what he wants to control can change over time. Here's a list of the main things he likes to control. Here's what Gary likes to control. The lights, blinds, windows, and curtains he decides when they're open or closed. The thermostat, he sets the temperature. The sink and showers, he controls the water usage. The opening and closing of doors, he decides when they're open or shut. The fans, he turns them on or off. The dishes, plates, and food left out, he gets upset if they're not cleaned up right away. And even me, he tries to control my actions and decisions. It's like he wants to be in charge of every little thing in our home. To give you a better idea of what it's like living with Gary's control, here are some examples. Our house is always dark because Gary turns off or closes all the light sources. If we turn them on, he constantly checks to make sure they're not wasting energy and turns them off as soon as we're done using them. If I accidentally leave a small amount of water behind the sink after washing my hands, Gary gives me a long lecture. If my shower takes longer than 8 minutes, Gary lectures me again. If I get up from the dinner table without finishing my meal, even if it's just to get a cup of water, Gary gets extremely upset and flips out. It's like he's always watching and waiting for me to make a mistake so he can criticize me. I want to mention that I have siblings, but it's important to note that Gary's controlling behavior is mostly directed at me. When I said I a lot in my previous examples, it's because Gary's rules and lectures are usually targeted towards me. My siblings, on the other hand, seem to get a free pass. They can leave a plate of food without cleaning up, take long showers without being timed, even leave water behind the sink without getting in trouble. It's like Gary has different rules for me compared to my siblings, and it's really unfair and frustrating. My relationship with Gary has always been difficult. We both have quick tempers and tend to yell at each other, which turns our home into a constant battleground. This is where Gary's entitled parent behavior comes into play. He thinks his rules and expectations should be followed without question, and he gets angry when I don't comply. To make matters worse, I have my own mental health issues that make me resistant to authority figures. This means I often push back against Gary's controlling behavior, which leads to even more conflict. You can probably see how this combination of factors creates a perfect storm of tension and arguing in our household. Whenever Gary and I get into an argument, he tells me that I need to submit to his authority. This phrase makes me even more frustrated and angry. It feels like he's trying to control me even more, and it's not fair. When I react to this by getting more frustrated, it escalates the fight even further. It's a vicious cycle. He tells me to submit, I get angry, and then we end up in an even bigger and more intense argument. Gary often starts fights with me on purpose. He says hurtful and provocative things to get a reaction from me. Some examples of what he said include, "You want to go nuclear? Let's go nuclear," meaning he's ready to escalate the fight. "You're useless." "You're stupid." Literally stupid. He emphasizes this to make it sound even more insulting. Recently, he said, "I'm like Sheldon from the TV show Young Sheldon," and then he mocked me, imitating my behavior and making fun of me. He's also said, "You're the single most hateful person I've ever met." These comments are meant to hurt and anger me, and they often succeed in starting a big fight. A bit about me, I'm not someone who backs down easily. When someone raises their voice or uses a certain tone, I tend to match it. This means I'll speak up loudly or firmly if someone else is doing the same. This trait often leads to arguments, especially with Gary, since we both have strong personalities and struggle to calm down when we disagree. Gary believes that because he's my parent, I should automatically obey him without question. He said, "I'm your parent, so you need to submit to my authority," but I don't think that's how respect works. I think respect is something you earn, not just because of your title or position. I asked him a question to make my point. If your parent was a serial killer, Would you still respect them just because they're your parent? Gary didn't know how to answer this, and instead of thinking about it, he just got angry and yelled at me. He didn't like being challenged or having to think about why he deserves respect. That's the essence of our situation. Gary is fixated on getting respect from me, but I don't feel he deserves it. I don't intentionally disrespect him. But I can't genuinely respect someone who consistently yells at me over minor things like sinks or lights. I can't respect someone who insults me or takes pleasure in thinking up punishments. I can't respect someone who even yells at our dog for simply playing with a toy. This is just a glimpse into our dynamic, but it's enough to show why I struggle to respect him. That's my experience with my entitled dad. Story 2. I'm still wondering if I was wrong to say no to a woman's partner staying overnight in the hospital with her and their newborn baby after she gave birth. I mean, it was a big moment for them, and I get that. But something just didn't feel right to me. After recently giving birth to my second child, I found myself in a shared hospital room with another new mom and her baby. That's just how it works in my country. Public hospitals usually put you in a shared room after delivery. Because of that, partners aren't allowed to stay overnight. But they can visit for longer than usual. I think it was from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. As the visiting hours were winding down, my husband had already headed home to be with our older child. That's when the woman and her baby, who I'd be sharing the room with, were brought in. Her partner was with them, and they were getting settled. Then, a midwife came over to me and asked if I'd be okay with the woman's partner staying overnight in our shared room. Apparently there were some complications, and they'd really appreciate it if he could stay. She also mentioned that my husband was welcome to come back, but that wasn't possible since our overnight childcare had already left town. I told the midwife I wasn't comfortable with the partner staying overnight, and she seemed annoyed but didn't pressure me. When she shared my decision with the couple, they became really upset. However, he ended up leaving shortly after. Later, when I woke up with my baby, I could hear the woman crying, and the midwives were in and out of our room all night, helping her with her baby. I eventually drifted off to sleep, but it was a bit of a challenging night.